You know, there's something special about old train stations. The way the wooden benches creaked, the echo of footsteps on stone floors, the faint smell of smoke drifting in. It wasn't just a place to travel, it was a place where stories lived. People met there, hugged there, said goodbye there. Sometimes it felt like time slowed down, just to let you take in every little detail of the journey ahead. I remember sitting on a cold bench, ticket in hand, watching the clock on the big wall. Those hands seemed slower than any clock at home. The waiting felt endless, yet comforting. You could hear the soft chatter of travelers, the shuffle of luggage, the squeal of a child tugging on their mother's coat. Even the silence had a presence, wrapping the station like a blanket you didn't want to shake off.
The train whistle. Oh, that sound could stir your heart. It wasn't just noise, it was a call, a deep, echoing cry that meant something was beginning. Folks would straighten their backs, gather their things, and step toward the platform with a mix of excitement and nerves. That whistle carried promise, like saying, "Come on, it's time to move, to see something new, to live another story you'll never forget." When the train finally rolled in, there was always a moment where everything seemed to pause. The steam would rise, white clouds wrapping around everyone waiting. It felt like standing in a dream. You'd catch glimpses of faces through windows, strangers about to become fellow travelers. The wheels screeched, the doors creaked, and suddenly the whole place came alive with movement and energy.
Boarding a train wasn't just stepping onto metal and wood. It was stepping into a moving world. The seats, worn smooth by countless passengers, carried secrets. The windows framed scenes like living paintings. Fields, rivers, and towns passed by. But inside, each person had their own thoughts, their own reasons for being there. You could almost feel the weight of everyone's stories blending together. Sometimes I'd sit near the back just to listen. You'd hear soldiers heading off to service, whispering about home. Sweethearts holding hands, saying little, but saying everything in their silence. Old men with newspapers pretending not to watch the world outside. Kids pressing their noses to the glass, amazed at cows in a field as if they were seeing magic for the first time. And then there was the rhythm, the gentle rocking of the train, the click-clack of wheels on tracks. It was like a lullaby, pulling you into thought or even into sleep. That sound could calm the busiest mind. Sometimes I'd drift off and wake up in a new town, feeling like I'd traveled not just in miles, but in time itself. The train had a way of carrying you beyond more than distance. There were dining cars, too, with their clinking glasses and the smell of coffee strong enough to keep you awake. Waiters balancing trays, folks sitting close together, strangers swapping stories over eggs and toast. Food always tasted better when the ground moved beneath your feet. Maybe it was the company, maybe the motion. But nothing beat a hot meal with a view racing past the window. At night, the train became something else entirely. Lights dimmed, shadows danced along the aisles, and the hum of the engine grew deeper. Some people curled up under coats, others sat awake, staring at stars through the glass. There was a strange comfort in knowing everyone was moving forward together, side by side, even if their lives would scatter at the next stop. Arriving was always bittersweet. The brakes screeched, the train slowed, and the station came into view. People stirred, gathering bags, adjusting hats. The doors opened, and suddenly the spell broke. Goodbyes were said, hugs given, hands waved. Yet every arrival felt like a story completing its circle. You stepped off changed, carrying not just luggage, but little memories stitched into your heart. Some stations had old wooden floors that creaked under every step. The sound mixed with echoes of voices and the faint rumble of trains outside. You could almost feel the history carved into those planks. Boots, heels, kids running, it all left marks. Sometimes I'd run my hand along the railing and imagine how many hands had touched it before mine, all carrying their own dreams and worries. Ticket counters were a show on their own. Behind the glass, clerks shuffled papers, stamped tickets, and asked, "Next, please." Each face in line told a story. Some nervous, some tired, others glowing with excitement. Watching folks clutch their tickets tight as if it were treasure always made me smile. That little piece of paper meant more than just travel. It meant change, hope, and the start of something. I loved the smell of coal and iron. Some folks might say it was dirty, but to me, it was life itself. The steam carried a warmth that filled the air, wrapping around you like an old jacket. Even years later, if I catch a whiff of that smoky scent, I'm back there, suitcase in hand, waiting with a heart that beat a little faster every time the whistle echoed. Porters were the quiet heroes of those days. Strong arms lifting heavy bags, pine smiles offering help when you least expected it. They knew the trains, the platforms, the schedules better than anyone. Sometimes they'd share a joke or tip their cap with a wink, making the long wait easier. Their voices blended with the noise, but their kindness always stood out in memory. There was something about those big station clocks, always hanging high, always ticking steady, no matter how impatient we felt. They ruled our lives, reminding us when it was time to board, when it was time to say goodbye. But I swear, the closer the minute hand got to departure, the slower it seemed to move. That wait was torture, yet somehow part of the magic. Sometimes I'd sit near the newsstand, newspapers stacked tall, magazines shining, candy jars tempting kids who tugged at their mothers' coats. Old men leaned on the counter, trading words about baseball or politics. The vendor always seemed to know everyone by name, calling out greetings with a wave. That little corner of the station was like its own small town, buzzing with life. The waiting rooms were stories themselves. Families huddled together on benches, soldiers sitting tall, travelers clutching hats. You'd hear laughter, whispers, even the soft sound of someone crying in the corner. The air was thick with emotion, hope, fear, excitement, and longing all tangled together. Sometimes just sitting there and watching felt like reading a book written in faces instead of words. When it rained, the whole station changed. Drops tapped against the roof, water trickled down windows, and travelers shook off umbrellas by the door. The smell of wet coats and wood filled the air. Kids pressed hands to glass, watching raindrops race down, picking favorites like they were horses. Somehow, rain made the station cozier, as if the world outside had paused. And the announcements. That crackling voice over the speaker calling out destinations in a tone both rushed and calm. Half the time, you could barely make out the words, but everyone seemed to understand anyway. Folks perked up, ears straining before grabbing their bags and heading off. That voice became part of the rhythm, another sound stitched into the fabric of memory. Kids loved the pigeons more than the trains. They'd chase them across the floor, laughing as feathers scattered and wings flapped. Pigeons always found their way into stations, strutting like they owned the place. Some travelers tossed crumbs, others shooed them away, but those birds were part of the scene, like tiny guardians of the platforms, watching journeys begin and end every day. Benches in the station were never truly empty. Suitcases leaned against them, newspapers left behind, scarves forgotten in the rush. I used to wonder about the owners, where they came from, where they went. Sometimes you'd sit down and feel the wood still warm from the last traveler, almost like their story lingered there for a moment before vanishing with the sound of the next whistle. Oh, the food stalls, the smell of fresh coffee, donuts stacked high, and hot dogs sizzling on the grill. Travelers lined up, coins clinking in their pockets as they picked something to eat before boarding. A hot cup in your hand made waiting easier, warming cold fingers and calming nerves. That little bite of sweetness or sip of coffee was like a friend, saying, "Hang in there, you're almost there."
Even the walls seemed alive. Posters of faraway places hung, faded but proud, promising sunshine beaches or snowy mountains. The paint peeled in spots, but to me it just added character. You could almost hear the whispers of stories soaked into those bricks. Every corner, every crack had seen laughter, goodbyes, and tearful reunions. A station wasn't just a building. It was a keeper of souls. I'll never forget the shoe-shine stands. Men leaned back, hats tipped low, as their shoes were polished to shine. The soft brush strokes, the click of the cloth snapping, it was a rhythm all its own. The shine boy often hummed a tune, smiling as he worked, chatting with strangers as if they were old friends. Even a quick polish felt like part of the ritual of travel.
Sometimes, when the train finally pulled in, the ground shook ever so slightly. You felt it in your shoes, a soft tremble reminding you how much power that iron beast carried. Steam hissed, brakes screeched, and doors clanked open. People surged forward, hearts racing with excitement or heavy with goodbyes. That moment, right before stepping on board, always felt like stepping into a new world. Then there were the reunions. A soldier coming home, a child running into their mother's arms, an old couple hugging tight after months apart. The station echoed with cheers, tears, and laughter. Those reunions painted the air brighter than any lamp could. Watching them, even as a stranger, filled your chest with warmth. You couldn't help but smile, because love always found its way there.
On the flip side, departures carried their own weight. Hands lingered in last touches. Waves stretched until the train finally rolled away. Some folks stood still long after, staring at the empty tracks, as if hoping the train might turn back. That kind of goodbye sat heavy in the air. Yet it was part of life, painful but true. And somehow the station always held both joy and sorrow. Nighttime at the station was a whole different story. Lamps cast long golden shadows, and voices softened to whispers. The trains seemed louder in the quiet, their whistles echoing through the dark like distant songs. The chill of the night made steam glow even brighter. If you sat alone on a bench, it almost felt like time stopped. The world hushed, waiting for morning.
Winter brought its own magic. Snowflakes clung to coats, breath turned to mist, and the station smelled of pine and wool. Travelers stomped their boots, shaking off the cold, grateful for the warmth inside. Kids pressed their noses to frosty windows, watching flakes fall on the tracks. There was something about winter in a station. It made even the longest waits feel like part of a story. And the sound of laughter echoing through the halls. Groups of friends setting off on adventures. Families telling stories to pass the time. Strangers sharing jokes like they'd known each other forever. That laughter cut through the noise, making the station feel lighter, warmer. In a place filled with so many emotions, hearing joy bounce off the walls reminded you that hope was always near.
Springtime brought music of its own. Doors swung open, letting in fresh air, and you could smell blossoms mixing with iron and smoke. Birds chirped above the rooftops, almost joining in with the train's whistle. Travelers seemed lighter, their coats gone, steps quicker. Spring gave the station a second life, like it too was waking from a long nap, stretching and smiling. Summer heat made the platform shimmer. Folks fanned themselves with tickets, kids slurped sodas, and ice cream dripped too fast for little hands to catch. Sunlight painted golden stripes across the tracks, almost blinding in spots. Even in the heat, excitement buzzed. Vacations, beach trips, and reunions were around the corner. The air hummed with possibility, sticky but sweet, like lemonade on a hot day. Autumn dressed the station in gold and rust. Leaves swirled in the wind, crunching under shoes as travelers hurried. Jackets returned, scarves peeked out, and the smell of roasted chestnuts sometimes drifted from a nearby cart. The air felt crisp, carrying with it a sense of change. People left for new jobs, schools, or simply journeys, their steps matching the rustle of fallen leaves. There were always small acts of kindness at the station. A stranger helping lift a heavy suitcase, someone offering directions, or sharing a spare umbrella when the rain poured. Those little moments stood out, bright as lanterns. In the rush of departures and arrivals, kindness reminded you that the world, though big and busy, still had space for gentle hearts. Speaking of rain, nothing beat watching it from inside. Drops raced down the glass. Trains hissed louder in the damp air, and puddles grew deep enough to reflect lanterns. Travelers pressed close together, coats dripping, conversations soft and patient. Rain slowed everything, turning even the loud station into a quiet rhythm. It was like the sky telling everyone to pause, breathe, and wait together. Sometimes, in the quiet between trains, I'd hear music. A violin player near the steps, notes echoing sweet and sad. Coins clinked into his case, but the real reward was in the smiles he gathered. Music filled the gaps between goodbyes and hellos, carrying stories no words could tell. Even one simple tune could make strangers feel like family for a few precious minutes. There were pets, too. Dogs tugging leashes, cats meowing from baskets, even a bird or two in cages. Their sounds mixed into the station's song. Kids knelt down to pet a friendly pup, laughter rising as tails wagged. Animals seemed to soften the sharp edges of travel. Amid the rush of trains and tickets, a wagging tail reminded you of home, waiting patiently for your return. I'll never forget the telephones lined along the wall. Folks dropping in coins, spinning the dial, voices bright or hushed. You could tell everything from body language. Some laughed, some cried, some stood still as statues. Those calls were bridges, connecting far-off hearts for a few minutes. And when the coins ran out, you felt the sting of silence quicker than the whistle of any train.
Then came the announcements, that crackly voice echoing through the hall. "Train to Chicago, boarding now." Words blurred by static, yet somehow clear enough to move whole crowds. The sound became part of the heartbeat of the station, each announcement sparking movement, footsteps quickening, doors slamming, laughter or sighs. That voice was the invisible conductor of it all. And oh, the benches at night,
Couples sat whispering, sharing secrets under dim lamps. Old men leaned back, hats tipped low, taking a short nap. Kids curled against mothers, safe even in the noise. Those benches carried countless memories, quiet witnesses to the endless flow of life. Sometimes sitting there, you felt part of something bigger, like the whole world passed by your seat.
Sometimes I just watched the lights flicker on the tracks. They stretched into the distance, shining like ribbons of gold. When a train approached, the gleam danced, turning silver, then fading to black again. That shimmer always felt like a promise. Something was coming. Someone was arriving. Life was moving forward, even in the stillest of moments. The tracks were never just metal. Oh, how children turned the station into adventure. They climbed onto luggage carts, peeked behind pillars, and played games while parents fussed with tickets. Their giggles bounced around the walls louder than any announcement. To a child, the station wasn't a place of waiting. It was a playground filled with mysteries. Watching them reminded us grown-ups not to rush life too much.
I can still picture the old station clocks, huge faces with black hands ticking steadily. They were both friend and foe, reassuring with their rhythm, yet relentless and pushing moments forward. People stared at them, counting minutes until goodbyes or reunions. The ticking seemed louder in those moments, almost like the clock itself knew the weight of what was about to happen. Vendors sold trinkets too. Postcards of the city, shiny keychains, even little pocket watches. Travelers picked souvenirs, holding on to a piece of their journey. Kids baked for toys. Parents gave in with a smile, and suddenly that trip had a token attached. Those little stalls were more than shops. They were keepers of memories, helping people carry a bit of the station wherever they went.
Sometimes I'd see folks writing letters right there, hunched over benches, pens scratching across paper. Before cell phones, that was how you kept loved ones close. The letters smelled faintly of smoke, ink, and the weight of longing. Dropping one into the mailbox felt like sending your heart on its own little journey. And weeks later, it would arrive, carrying the station's spirit along. Not every moment was bright, though. Sometimes arguments broke out. Missed trains, lost luggage, tired travelers snapping at one another. Voices rose, tempers flared. But just as quickly, peace returned. The station swallowed anger like it swallowed joy. A place too big to hold grudges for long. Soon the whistle of a train washed it all away, reminding folks to move forward. I remember the janitors, too, quiet figures with brooms and mops moving between the chaos. They kept the station shining, floors swept, windows clear. You rarely noticed them unless you looked closer, but without them, the station would crumble. Their steady work was like the heartbeat beneath the noise, unseen but essential. They were part of the station's story as much as anyone else. Then there were the lost items, gloves, hats, even a teddy bear left behind. The lost and found box overflowed with forgotten pieces of lives. Some were never claimed, left to gather dust. I used to wonder about them. Who wore that hat? Who held that toy? What stories did they carry? Even the forgotten had their place, whispers of people who passed through once. When dawn broke, sunlight spilled through the windows, painting golden paths across the floor. Travelers stirred awake, yawns stretching wide, tickets clutched tight. The station seemed to sigh with relief, greeting a new day. That first train whistle at sunrise was softer somehow, as if even the iron beast respected the quiet beauty of morning light washing over the world.
And now, looking back, I see the station not just as bricks and tracks, but as a living memory. It held laughter, tears, dreams, and goodbyes. It shaped countless stories, mine included. Every whistle still echoes in my chest, reminding me of journeys taken and those yet to come. The station wasn't just where trains passed, it was where life itself paused, connected, and moved on.